I look at myself as the same way. I'm an advocate for our audience, and the audience is anybody who's happening to be laying in bed in the morning and they don't want to get out of bed and they're just looking at their phone. And what is it that's going to give them something to send to their best friend? Or, whatever it is, like they're looking for an escape, they're sitting on the toilet, they're looking at their phone. Can I give you a chuckle? Then I've done my job at that point. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to advocate for the audience. Anybody who owns a business or anybody who's working for a brand, there's no shortage of things that you can do that's going to make yourself feel good. And I can feel good by checking a box and saying, well, we have to promote this and we have to tell people about this. But when we're talking about digital media and we're talking about content, if you don't give people a reason to care about those things, I always tell folks, like, you're just yelling into the wind. You're really telling
Mhm.
nobody. So you're just making yourself feel good and you're checking
Yeah.
this to-do list, but you're making your job that much harder.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Radical Content. Eric Gray here, and I'm excited for today's conversation, partly because I get to go back to some roots of theme parks and branded entertainment and talk to my buddy, Joey Thorsen, who we've never really fully met. We've talked a lot on LinkedIn, but connected, but super excited. You guys are doing some amazing stuff up there in Branson, Joey, and so I'm pumped to have you on the show today.
Likewise, this is exciting.
Well, good. Well, one of the things that we like to talk about a lot here at Radical Content and is we like to really highlight brands and learn from brands that are kind of doing things different, right? They're not just taking the traditional model and trying to come up with a brand campaign, one message, put it in front of a TV ad and put that TV ad everywhere. We're trying to talk to people that are really leveraging social content storytelling, really trying to put engagement first in the brand. And I've always liked a bunch of what y'all are doing, but then recently you guys have been doing more stuff that we're going to kind of break into. But before we get into that, I want to hear a little bit about your background. We don't have to go back to the on a stormy night in May of 19 whatever. But I'd like to hear a little bit of your background and we have a little bit of a shared background.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like you said, I cut my teeth in sports entertainment. Started in minor league hockey, went to arena
Oh, I didn't know
football,
that.
did some stuff for AAA baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals, a little for the NFL, and then the majority of my time was spent with the NBA's Memphis Grizzlies, which is my hometown. So apologies to any Orlando Magic fans out there, but that's where I spent the majority of my time was with the Grizzlies, and it thought that that's where my life was going to be, was just in sports entertainment. And lo and behold, I met a girl from Branson, Missouri, and we ended up
It's always a girl.
making the.
Every story starts with a girl.
It's always a girl, and after we had kids, and this is where all of her family was in this region of the country. It made sense to make the move over here to Middle America. And when we did that, it was an easy transition for me to go from sports entertainment to theme park marketing. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But I mean, really, we're just talking about audiences, whether that's a live audience or a digital audience. And haven't looked back since and couldn't be happier right now.
You said it's an easy transition, but for you and for me, maybe it is because I went from sports radio to gaming marketing and then themed entertainment. But it does sound like quite a jump, and so maybe take us inside of that decision a little bit. Like I remember the moment where I was like, "Man, am I going to really leave sports radio and start being a company
Yeah.
marketer? What does that even really mean? I didn't study marketing, so tell me about that decision making process."
Well, for me, if you couldn't tell by looking at me, I'm not a natural athlete. I am not somebody. When we played
Yeah, same.
basketball in elementary school, I was like the kid who said, I will volunteer to operate the scoreboard. So like I did not want to go out and embarrass myself. I never thought of myself of getting into sports. I loved movies. Always wanted to just make movies as a kid. And I gravitated to sports because I loved the intro videos that would play before
Yeah.
sports teams would, like, for me it was hockey. That was my intro, and I wasn't necessarily a hockey fan, but I loved that moment before the team took the ice and they would play this intro video and it would pump people up. And I just sought out the guy who was leading the game operations at the time, and I said, hey, I would love to just shadow you. I want to learn more about this. And that's what got me into sports, because I loved the idea of the video production side of it. And really, what I learned in my time in sports, and really it was the same thing that gravitated me towards movies, was the idea of just eliciting a reaction from people. And for me, making that jump to someone who is sitting in a theater and watching something on a screen, to sitting in an arena, to now sitting in front of their phone or in front of their computer screen, it's really all the same thing. I found out that's what I really enjoy, and that's what I'm good at, is getting a reaction out of people.
All right, so just give us the quick overview. The Silver Dollar City Company. Tell us about the brand, a little bit about the business, what it is, so as we dive in, people are a little
Yeah.
bit grounded in what y'all do every day.
Yeah, so I would say we're the best kept secret in theme parks. If you hear about theme parks, everybody's going to talk about Disney. They're going to talk about Universal. But let's say you take the
Really?
coast out of the
Really? You went with
conversation.
Disney before Universal with me on the phone. Wow. All right, keep going, Joey. Sorry to interrupt you.
They're going to talk about Universal. They're going to talk about Disney. No, but I think when you take out those big players out of it, then you've got everything else. And
Yeah.
I would say Silver Dollar City carves out this unique niche in the theme park world, is that we provide for people the level of experience they're going to get when they go to a Universal Studios, but they're going to get it here in the middle of the country. So we have a theme park here, we have a water park here, we have lodging here, we've got a dinner cruise. It's like, I mean, it's themed attractions right here in America's heartland.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. My parents lived in Springfield for a little while. We went to Branson a couple times. They keep trying to bring me back, but it's super awesome. And so I appreciate that overview, and I think people will appreciate that. All right, so let's dive in a little bit. That we kind of understand kind of your background and kind of where you're coming from. What do you think? How do you guys think about this idea of content and engagement differently at Silver Dollar City versus some other people? Because you obviously are bringing an audience building mindset, a broadcasting kind of mindset to a marketing
Mhm.
organization. How do you think about that as you navigate your everyday, and how has it felt internally as you've been kind of bringing new strategies and new ideas to the table?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say I am the biggest believer in what you're doing here with radical content. I would look at myself as an acolyte of you. If you have no fans, it means I'm not on this earth anymore.
Oh,
So the
wow, that
reason
means a lot.
you would say, "Oh, Joey Thorsen is the head of content," I am the head of content because of your podcast. So
Oh
I
man, that means
listened
a
to the
lot.
first few episodes of your podcast. I took things that I heard on that, I put it into practice, and I mean, I can say this with 100% certainty. It changed the trajectory of my career because of your podcast. So
Oh,
I thank
dude.
you for that. Um,
Man, that means so much. That means so much.
um,
We don't have to stay
I'm
there
gonna
all day, but that means a lot.
no, it's
Yeah.
all right. I'm sitting in the backyard. I'm cutting my grass. I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm hearing things that are being said. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I sit there and I stop and I take notes. And then, of course, here we are. So I'm
So
sitting
cool.
here right behind me. This is not a virtual background. I'm sitting here in an actual content studio that was created to serve the content that we create here at this park. So I would say we look at things differently here, because for most businesses, not just theme parks, but most businesses, they just want to generate revenue. That's ultimately at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're trying to do. Like for us at theme parks, we're trying to sell tickets, but if you own a restaurant, you're just trying to get people in the door. Um, we're trying to do exactly that. What I have learned though is that we have to put the audience first in that process. And it's not prioritize audience only, but it's just if you prioritize the audience first, then you're going to get what you want out of it. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
same way if you own a restaurant, you're not going to serve crappy food and think that you're going to have the best restaurant. You're not going to get some Michelin stars if you're serving crappy food. If you want people busting down the door, you have to have a reason to get people busting down the door. And for us, that's what we do, and that's what we prioritize. So
So, but you don't go from like listening to a podcast of me to a content studio. There's a lot more to that story.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about the journey, because I imagine smaller theme
Hmm.
park, not a giant marketing team, probably not a giant marketing budget, and so
Hmm.
decisions have to be made. And you guys have decided that storytelling, engagement, doing things in a different way are really, really important in helping us to show up, to build audiences, and to build brand awareness. So maybe
Yeah.
pull me inside a little bit. Like, what has it been like trying to pitch and build
Yeah.
this at the company?
So my story here at Silver Dollar City started at the end of 2018, going into 2019, where I took over our social media. At that point, I made a conscious decision to switch what we were doing to make it about us and to think about, well, what is it that people care about? And there was a marked difference when I started to do that. And I can think the first thing I did was a tweet that said, here's what Silver Dollar City looks like when our Christmas festival ends. Now, our Christmas festival is like a big deal here in
Mm-hmm.
Missouri. Lots of Christmas lights. People come for it. And I said, here's what we look like when we turn off all of our Christmas lights. And it was just a black screen. And that was it. And that got 10x the number of engagement of anything we had ever done prior. And I got 10 phone calls that day from people inside the organization being like, what are you doing? You have to delete this. And I'm like, why should I delete it? Look at all the people who are now caring about what we said because we were just sitting there being silly and making fun of ourselves, or just having fun with the fact that we're on
Yeah.
social media. I think that's the big thing for me when I think about social media, but then any content in general, is that we're not competing. Like, we're a theme park in the middle of the country. We're not competing against um, other theme parks. We're
Right.
competing against your friends and family that are posting pictures of the Northern Lights last night. We're competing of your next door neighbor whose kid just won a gold medal at the cross country meet. That's what you're there to see. And everything else that we're putting out as brands is an
Yeah.
interruption. And if you don't want to be looked at as an interruption, you have to give them something. And giving them something is not saying, come visit us. It's just being fun. It's being entertaining in some way or shape or form.
I love that story. And every social media manager has tried something out and had a brand manager call them and say, "Hey, you need to delete that tweet," or "What are you doing?"
Hmm.
But what I used to say a lot of times is, I could put something out and you would see tens of 20s of 30s of thousands of people responding with a brand. They're literally choosing, they're raising their hand and interacting with the brand because of something you did or because of an emotional connection that they have with your brand. Because people would oftentimes say, like, what's that worth, or what's the value of that, or where are you attributing revenue in that?
Hmm.
And we're getting better at tracking and putting analytics to what we're doing. But back in the day, it was a little bit of a gut. But what I used to say was, there's thousands of people interacting with your brand now. 5 minutes ago, those people weren't interacting with your brand. And between then and now, all we did was write something creative and press publish. How much is that worth to your brand? How much is that worth to any brand? And so, yes, many social media
Hmm.
managers have had that. They're listening right now, and they're saying, "Yes, yes, Joey." And so, you've done that, and kind of you're still in the
Hmm.
middle of it, with all that's happening on social. But I gotta talk to you about Ozarkly.
Yeah.
So tell everybody what Ozarkly is, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time there, because that's the thing that when I saw that come through, and I was like, "Oh, Joey's doing something special. Like, this is different."
Yeah. No, for me, first and foremost, Ozarkly is the place for American food, music, and culture. And not to relate everything back to your time at Universal,
Yeah,
or even for us in our company, I would say the high watermark is a park like Dollywood that's in our same company.
sure.
And right now, people gravitate towards IP. There's a reason why no movie can get made unless it's attached to some type of IP. For us here, our IP and the reason that people come to visit us is because they are a certain type of people. As Seth Godin likes to say, people like us do this.
Hmm.
So, who are the type of people that come to our park? It's the people who love their families. It's the people who like to cook meals at home. It's the people who listen to country and bluegrass and Americana music. So I created Ozarkly as a way to do a couple things. One, we have this messy middle for us in terms of our marketing funnel. We spend a lot of money on awareness. We spend a lot of time and effort on bottom funnel conversion. But then what do we do in between there? And we depend on other people to tell our story. And I created Ozarkly to say, no, we're going to now take ownership of that. We're going to tell our story. Once you have heard about us, once you've seen a billboard, we're going to give you instructions on what to do next. And it's not buy a ticket, it's
Mm-hmm.
just here's who we are
Yeah.
and help move you further down that funnel because we're going to give you also ads to tell you to buy a ticket. Oh, believe me, like we got the budget for that. So that's why we created
Yeah.
Ozarkly was to fill that messy middle. In addition to that, though, is let's say you've never heard of us and let's say we're not even on your radar, but you're into bluegrass music. You like Zach Bryan, you like Tyler Childers, you own a cast iron skillet. We should be the people that can come in there and teach you not to put your cast iron skillet in the dishwasher. And we should be the person that can say, you like this type of music? Well, here's 10 concerts that are more of this type of music.
Yeah.
Over time, and this is a long play, my bet is that we're going to be those people that say, man, if I love this type of music, if I like eating this type of food, I need to make a trip. I need to make that pilgrimage to Missouri and go visit this theme park because they've been there for me when I had $10 and I need to make a quick family meal that's going to help me feed my kids. That's not going to bust the bank. So
I love that, and everything you said, I relate to. You've probably heard me talk about it a little bit. I talk about messy middle, the engagement gap. It is that spot between tons of marketers dumping money in the top of the funnel and then the bottom of the funnel, and what are we doing in the middle to connect? What are we doing in the middle to engage? What I used to say is people don't want to have someone just run out there like a sandwich board and say 10.99 tickets, whatever it is.
right.
It's they need that first date. They need you to woo them a little bit. They need to kind of attract them, pull them in, show some sort of value. And so yours was Ozarkly, ours was Discover Universal.
Right.
And so we spent a lot of time doing some of similar stuff. But I like that as I've gotten in and I've started to poke around a little bit. I feel like you're even going further into almost kind of psychographical content and culturally relevant content. Ours was the theme park was really the backdrop for all of it. But I like that you've really identified a persona or a group of personas, and we're like, what are they really into, and how do we show up and be valuable?
Well,
So said just real quick to close that loop. Ozarkly is an actual like web destination hub. Like you can go right now. They've got a new podcast. They've got original video, and so it is a really immersive destination that they're just getting started on. Planning guides, entertainment. Like there's news, and there's a lot that's going on here. But it gives the Silver City group and organization an opportunity to attract and show up in people's news feeds that wouldn't normally otherwise want to hear from the Silver City, but you're providing value in other places. Sorry, I know I interrupted you a second ago.
no, and I would say here's the argument for like how I take the jump from like social media manager to head of content for organization. And that's a title that was just completely created. So it's not like, oh, someone left and I was the
Sure.
natural person to fill that role. We made the argument for it and we justified that to grow our team here. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are probably saying, well, how can I grow, in my organization? Make that argument for yourself. Don't just wait for someone to leave or take another job and then you fill their role. But the argument we made for that and the harsh reality is that print media is dead or dying. TV is dead or dying. Social media is on the decline. The social media of 2010 no longer exists. So what are we doing with all of that? And
Mm-hmm.
there are organizations out there with marketing budgets of and we're in that you know kind of sphere too. We're spending money on traditional media, but that money that we're spending gets less and less effective every day.
Mm-hmm.
We should be the
Yeah.
ones to create our own media organizations. And you do not need a huge budget to do that. The only thing you need to create your own media organization is a person and a phone. And you can do that right now. I'm not the only example of that. There's hundreds of examples
Yeah.
of people out there that have created companies from a person and a phone. We're just trying to do it before somebody else can do it better than us.
Yeah. So walk me inside of the actual Ozarkly, right? You said you're in a set. What do you shoot here in this set?
Yeah, so right here behind me, this is our kitchen. This is where we currently and will be continue to make. Think of the Rachel Ray, the
Mhm.
Emeralds of the past. This is what we're here to do. So Silver Dollar City is a theme park that's known for great food, and if we're known for great food, and if people come here to eat, then we want to give you that ability to create great food in your home, and that's what this set here behind me is for.
That's awesome. And you got a podcast up and running. What's the sole purpose of the podcast?
Yeah, the sole purpose of the podcast, the long and short of it, is just to give people more of a reason to fill that middle, is to learn more about this place and things that we can't necessarily tell you in a 30-second TV commercial, or we can't put it on a billboard that you would see when you're driving past the highway. So next week, we're about to announce our biggest expansion in 65 years. And probably by the time this podcast drops, that news will have come out, but we're going to devote an entire
Yeah.
segment of that podcast just talking about that huge multi-million dollar announcement.
How did you go through because there's, by the way, like we're talking like high level concepts, right? And but there's so many like little tiny things. So I'm going to go into a little tiny thing. How did you decide who is hosting the podcast? Because that is a big content decision that you have to make, and now you're up
Yeah.
and running.
I would say I look at myself as relating to people who own a small business, because I don't have a huge budget to go out and hire talent. So I looked internally, and I wanted to find people who could host our podcast that A, could understand and deliver a message, and B, not do it in a salesy way, the way somebody like a normal marketer would. And I
Mm-hmm.
found um, two folks on our team that one of them works in partnership marketing. The other one used to be an entertainer on our park and just moved into doing PR. And both of them are just genuine people that you would want to sit there and have a conversation with. And I asked them, can I just steal 1 hour a month from you guys? And you just come and sit right here and just talk about stuff. That's all that I asked them to do. And they love it.
I love one of the things I love about all of this is like, you can look and go to the website and, depending on where you are in your history. Like for me, I learned from the group at Marriott. It sounds like Joey might have learned a little bit from me, right? So you're really learning from the group at Marriott, Joey, as you talk, listen and kind of look at what we did. But I love that, like, you can look at this and say, oh, he's got this set and this website's up and their TikTok's doing well. And you could go, man, Joey's probably got, a few $1 million. He's got a big team. He's got an agency supporting him. And I'm not going to go into all those details. Joey can share what he wants, but like, I love that what you're showing, Joey, is that sometimes it's about like picking up the phone and being like, hey, would y'all like to do a podcast? It would be really helpful for us. I think it would help tell our story. You're already here. It might actually make you enjoy your jobs more to kind of have kind of a little bit of a different kind of creative outlet. So building out content infrastructures don't always have to be some big ordeal with lots of money and tons of people. And to be honest, they're probably done better when you keep them small and keep less people out of it, because then you can really
That's
kind of shape it and own it in a good way.
That's true. I mean, like we're a business that has money to spend on marketing. Now, how much have I had to spend on social media in the past? Like $0. I get paid to be
Yeah.
here, but that's it.
Yeah.
And our most successful pieces of content that broke out of that bubble, that got people to call us and had, you know, news articles written about us, the money that was spent on that was $0. And I can say that with
Yeah.
certainty. I mean, sure, like I pay Verizon every month to, to have my phone, but I mean, that was my budget. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
I love that. All right, so let's go over to TikTok. I know you guys have had some success creating content, telling your story on TikTok. It's always interesting when people, are going onto a new platform and onto a new channel. You want to make sure that you're doing it well. So tell me a little bit about what you guys have been doing on TikTok and where have you guys found some success?
I would say our biggest success is, for us, I understood early on that TikTok was not our audience. So when I would say our audience is people who live within 200 miles of our park and who know
Hmm.
us. TikTok was people who lived anywhere in the country or in the world and had no idea who we were. So how would we come and show up to those people? And that's another thing of just putting that audience first. So I said, well, how would a 19th century theme park show up in a TikTok space? The first time that we actually popped off with that was we have this group called the Homestead Pickers, and they're these guys who are in their late 70s, some of them early 80s, that play bluegrass music. We had them dancing to a current song, and there was something about that dichotomy of old guys holding banjos and upright basses dancing to a current song. There's something just inherently visually just funny or interesting about that. And that's what I've gravitated to ever since then. And it reminds me of like, it's that whole like Beverly Hillbillies, which we have, if
Yeah.
anybody's interested in it, like our park has a whole history with the actual Beverly Hillbillies. But you think about what's the comedy of that show, it's these like country people interacting with the modern world. I look at us on TikTok as country people interacting with the modern world. But anybody, I mean, anybody could do that with whatever business or brand that they're working with.
Um, yes, anyone can do it, but at the same time, it does take a unique creative mind to kind of think of that, right? Because what most people are going to do is they're going to go, okay, what's going on TikTok? What's successful in TikTok? What do we have to talk about? We got to talk about these things. Okay, great. We'll just do that in that way. We'll do it,
Mhm.
and but just the idea that you're bringing this creative overlay of how might we interact in a TikTok space, to me is such a creative, way to think about that. And it drives kind of a much larger, bigger idea. And the other thing it does that I always talk about when I'm thinking about in each individual channel mattering is it gives a purpose for the platform, right? If you're the same thing on
Yeah.
TikTok that you are on YouTube, that you are on Instagram, what purpose do I have to follow you? What value am I getting back? And so by saying like, wait, let's go into TikTok in an original way. The one thing I'd say, um, I've said this to a few people. For many years, I wanted to crush Disney at social media. I worked at Universal, of course I did, and I thought we did in a lot of things. But then TikTok came around and they kicked our butts. At TikTok, they did a really really great job. They got the platforms a little quicker. They were a little quicker into it. They mobilized around it, and I know some of those people. I've worked with some of them after I left, and so I know some of the why behind it. But I just believe they did a really great job of inherently understanding the platform and going in natively. And I think, when I was at Universal towards the end, we were still kind of trying to figure that out. And it's not always very intuitive, but that's why coming up with that creative overlay, Joey, I think is a really, 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 really great way in.
Yeah. I think about the most successful salespeople out there are saying, well, I'm an advocate for my client versus I'm just trying to sell you something. I look at myself as the same way. I'm an advocate for our audience. And the
Audience.
audience is anybody who's happening to be laying in bed in the morning and they don't want to get out of bed and they're just looking at their phone. And what is it that's going to give them something to send to their best friend? Or, whatever it is. Like they're looking for an escape, they're sitting on the toilet, they're looking at their phone. Can I give you a chuckle? Then I've done my job at that point. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to advocate for the audience. Anybody who owns a business or anybody who's working for a brand, there's no shortage of things that you can do that's going to make yourself feel good. And I can feel good by checking a box and saying, well, we have to promote this and we have to tell people about this. But when we're talking about digital media and we're talking about content, if you don't give people a reason to care about those things, I always tell folks like you're just yelling into the wind. You're really telling
Mhm.
nobody. So you're just making yourself feel good and you're checking
Yeah.
this to-do list, but you're making your job that much harder.
Yeah. One of the things I always tell people is I always find it like so disheartening when I hear about content being created that no one's consuming. It's like we
What's
wrote
the
a
point?
brief, we talked to a writer, we had to write something, we gave feedback on it, we were really like trying to get it perfect. And then like no one opens the email or no one responds to it. And so that's one of my main ways that I try to tell people, look, you got to be unique, you got to be differentiated, you got to be creating value. If you're not doing any of these things, don't do it. Like just don't be in social, don't be in YouTube
Yeah,
because
right.
because it's not going to work if you just try to
Yeah,
take the mindset that you put everywhere else and push it in these channels and press it out and then say,
right.
why aren't people engaging? It's because they don't wake up thinking, I wonder what brand X is going to say to me on Twitter today, right? That's just,
Nobody
it's not
cares.
what, yeah, nobody cares. Yeah.
You
All
know,
right. So,
this
oh,
is
you go ahead.
probably going to out me, and I just have to say it. And I know this is probably going to out me. I grew up as a huge wrestling fan, and even still am, like pro wrestling, not collegiate wrestling, not that fake collegiate stuff or Olympic
Like
stuff. I'm talking about pro
WWF
wrestling.
before it was WWE.
Yes, that's right. And I admire those performers so much because every day they're going and they're putting themselves out there. And I look at myself as a marketer, you're no different than a professional wrestler. And what's the
Mm-hmm.
worst thing that you could do is go out there and put on the best match ever, but nobody cares and everybody's just sitting there eating their popcorn. If you go back and you look last year, there was some premium live event in Montreal, and it was Sami Zayn versus the champion Roman Reigns at the time. And for the first 20 minutes of that match, all they did was stand there and stare at each other, and the people could not have cheered any louder at that
Oh my
point.
God.
And I thought, these are two people who understand this audience, and they're in conversation with this audience, and they are just nailing it at every sense. And
Yeah.
I try and emulate that because it's like, every single like that I get and every single comment that I get and every single visit to our website means that I'm in this conversation with people who care
Yeah.
about what we're doing, and they're caring because we've done it right.
Yeah. No, I love that. I do have to ask you though now, like, who is your wrestling hero that you grew up following?
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. My wrestling hero is Jerry the King Lawler.
All right. Yeah, that's way back. I'm from Texas, so it was the entire Von Erich family, which we won't go into that story. That's sad. All right.
Watch the Iron
So
Claw if you haven't.
I saw it. It was so good. It was so good. Although I knew most of the story, so I was like, I wish they'd gone a little bit deeper, but I think it was good for other people. So let's take a moment and remember yourself mowing the lawn, listening to a podcast, and taking some advice, and now you're at the mic and you're a little bit down the pipe. You haven't solved everything. You're not scaled to where you want to get to, but you're doing some good things there at Silver Dollar City. What would you tell a social media manager that has, kind of these same kind of visions of a live and interactive social presence, and that's focused on entertainment, and wants to build out a YouTube channel and maybe a podcast and a blog, and they've got all these dreams and visions? What would you tell them as you're kind of in the middle of this journey, but you started to check some things off the list? What's some advice you might have?
I would say that we all have cortisol addictions, and we're all addicted to our phones and our devices. And what you need to do is think about what you want to do and then forget about it. And I've said this before, but one of my favorite book series is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And they talk about in it, how do you learn how to fly? It's by throwing yourself towards the ground and then forgetting about it. And if you can forget about that moment right before impact where you know it's going to hurt, then automatically you're going to be floating. And that's where I find I get the absolute best inspiration is to say, okay, I know two things. I know I need to make money, and I know that I need to make the audience care about it. And then I just go and forget about it and do something else and do that repeatedly. You're going to have something good happen.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Well, Joey, I've enjoyed kind of watching your career. I'm excited to see where it's going to go from here. You guys are doing some awesome stuff, so keep at it. Thank you so much for being a part of Radical Content. We're excited that you're a listener, and we're excited that you're on the show. But yeah, man, we appreciate the time today. Okay.
I appreciate you. I can't wait to wear my t-shirt when it arrives in the mail.
You say that. We need to start doing that. I need to put that on the list. Yes. All right, Joey. You just gave me a job. Thanks I appreciate that. That's another episode of Radical Content. That is Joey. Thank you so much. Tune in again. We'll have more content coming around in the corner. We appreciate you listening. Thanks, everybody. See ya. Bye.